Behind the polished facades of Victorian London, an empire of vice flourished in plain sight, while nearly 120,000 women sold sex on its streets. Only a privileged few, known as brothel queens, earned fortunes serving the elite and dodging justice. Their world generated millions, yet most women saw only debt and danger. Who protected these madams, and why did the law itself seem powerless to stop them? The answer begins with the staggering scale of the Victorian sex trade. Estimates from the late 19th century put the number of women working in London's sex trade between 80,000 and 120,000. That's nearly 5% of the city's adult female population, more than the number of teachers, nurses, and domestic servants combined. In the crowded streets of Whitechapel and the gaslit avenues of Chelsea, the business of prostitution became one of London's most profitable hidden industries. Contemporary reports, like those of Henry Mayhew, struggled to keep pace with the true scale. Police records listed only a fraction of the women involved, but reformers and journalists pointed to a vast shadow economy. Brothels ranged from dingy rooms in the East End to lavish townhouses in the West, serving clients who paid handsomely for privacy and discretion. Some elite establishments charged £5 to £20 per visit, a sum that could cover a working family's rent for months. The financial stakes were enormous. Annual earnings from the trade soared into the millions, rivaling the profits of legitimate Victorian enterprises. Successful madams could pocket £200 to £500 a year, double or triple what a skilled artisan earned. Yet, for most women, the promise of quick money proved hollow. After deducting rent, fines, and the endless costs imposed by brothel keepers, many found themselves trapped in cycles of debt. Despite the scale, the authorities rarely intervened in the operations of high-end brothels. Police tolerated those who kept their business discreetly, especially when wealthy patrons were involved. The city's economic engine churned quietly, fueled by transactions that never appeared in official ledgers. In the shadows, fortunes were made and lost, and the true size of the industry remained an open secret, one that shaped the social fabric of Victorian London. Victorian law drew a sharp line between those who profited from the sex trade and those who bore its costs. Disorderly house charges, the main legal tool used against brothel operators, rarely resulted in more than a nominal fine. For a madam running an established house in Chelsea or Kensington, £10 or even £200 in penalty was simply a business expense, often less than a week's takings from elite clients. Police records reveal a pattern as long as business remained discreet. And complaints from neighbors were rare. Enforcement was LAX. Officers might accept a quiet payment to overlook a well-run establishment, especially if the clientele included men of influence. The contrast with street-level enforcement was stark. Working-class women, often without protection or powerful clients, faced routine arrest and public shaming. The Contagious Diseases Acts allowed police to detain women on suspicion alone, subjecting them to invasive examinations and, if they refused, imprisonment. Yet, in the West End, the same laws were rarely enforced. There, the brothel functioned as a private club for the privileged, shielded from scrutiny by layers of wealth and social connection. Behind the closed doors of these exclusive houses, the economics of exploitation played out in silence. A successful madam could clear £200 to £500 a year, a sum that dwarfed the annual wages of most skilled tradesmen. But the women who worked for her rarely saw more than a fraction of what clients paid. Rent for their rooms, fines for minor infractions, and charges for clothing or food were all deducted from their earnings. Many found themselves in debt from the moment they entered, bound by contracts that made leaving nearly impossible. Account books from the period show women keeping as little as 1/4 of their income, with the rest flowing upward. For the madam, the system offered security and profit. For the workers, it meant dependency and often a lifetime of servitude. On the morning of May 5, 1885, Mary Jeffries stepped from a carriage at Bow Street Police Court, flanked by officers in full military dress. Her name had become synonymous with discretion and danger. Her brothels in Chelsea, Kensington, and Hampstead catered to men whose titles alone could silence scandal. Inside, the courtroom filled with whispers of what might surface. Witnesses had come forward. A housemaid described a girl of 13, beaten and assaulted behind locked doors. Others named rooms set aside for the most violent appetites. Yet, when the charge was read, it was the usual, keeping a disorderly house. Jeffries pleaded guilty, her voice steady. The fine, £200, was handed over without hesitation, a sum that matched just a few weeks' profit from her wealthiest clients. The magistrate accepted the plea. Evidence was never aired. The names in her ledgers and the stories of girls trafficked and abused remained sealed in the court's files. For the men who visited her houses, members of the House of Lords, guards officers, even rumoured royalty, there would be no exposure, no inquiry, no consequence. As the proceedings ended, Jeffries left the courthouse surrounded by her escorts, a guard of honour in tailored uniforms. Outside, reporters waited for a statement, but she offered none. The court had done its part. The law's penalty was paid, the scandal contained, and the machinery of privilege rolled on. In the months that followed, her brothels continued to operate, untouched by police and protected by silence. The £200 fine meant to punish became little more than a receipt, a token cost for the right connections. For Mary Jeffries, justice was not a reckoning. It was a transaction, settled in cash and secrecy. In the narrow alleys of Whitechapel, punishment looked very different for those without powerful friends. Anne Taylor, a working-class madam, ran several small brothels on Brick Lane and Flower and Dean Street. Her houses relied on a system of debt, trapping women with advances for clothing and for rent that could never quite be repaid. Police raids were common in these neighbourhoods. In February 1867, Taylor was fined £10, a sum she paid on the spot and then returned to her business. Others, like Catherine Murphy of Spitalfields, faced 3 months of hard labour for similar offences. For women at the bottom of the hierarchy, the law offered little mercy and no protection. Public outrage simmered for years, but it took a new kind of evidence to spark real change. In July 1885, the journalist W.T. Stead set out to prove how easily a child could be bought in London. Working with the Salvation Army, he arranged the purchase of 13-year-old Eliza Armstrong for £5. Stead documented every step, from the negotiation to a forged medical certificate. The resulting articles, published as the maiden tribute of modern Babylon in the Pall Mall Gazette, shocked the nation. Details of child procurement and abuse filled the headlines, fueling riots and heated debates in Parliament. The response was swift. Within months, the Criminal Law Amendment Act of 1885 passed, raising the age of consent from 13 to 16. The act also expanded police powers against brothels, but enforcement remained uneven. Meanwhile, activists like Josephine Butler continued to fight the Contagious Diseases Acts, laws that targeted women for forced medical examinations while leaving clients untouched. Butler's campaign, supported by thousands of signatures and by relentless public meetings, finally succeeded in 1886 when Parliament repealed the acts. Exposure, outrage, and the tireless work of reformers had set the machinery of reform in motion, and they forced a system that had protected the powerful for far too long into public reckoning. Class still shapes who faces justice and who escapes it. Today, sex trafficking generates over $99 billion a year worldwide. The shadows that protected Victorian madams now shield new forms of exploitation, until power stops buying silence. History's darkest bargains remain unfinished business. Share your thoughts below.